Do guitars from Indonesia suck and are Korean guitars always superior? Let's find out in this video. Hey guys, John here from Sonic Drive Studio. I hope you're all doing well and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to talk about a topic that comes up in the guitar community all the time, and that is the quality of Indonesian-made guitars versus the quality of Korean-made guitars. A lot of brands make guitars in Indonesia these days, and some of the bigger brands like ESP LTD, for example, first they made all their high-end guitars like the Deluxe series or 1000 or Signature models all in Korea, but now they've partially moved that production to Indonesia. So when you get one of those guitars, you either get one that was made in Korea or one that was made in Indonesia, and it's basically a random lottery. But the folks from ESP claim that there is no difference in quality whatsoever, so today we're going to take a look at that. Now for Schecter, as far as I'm aware, it doesn't work like that. A guitar model is either made in Indonesia or Korea, so you always know upfront where those guitars are made. Correct me if I am wrong though. I could be wrong, but as far as I know, it's how that works with Schecter. I guess that Indonesia is just more affordable for those brands, so I can see why they are moving production over there. I don't know anything about the business aspects or details behind that. I'm not good at economics, so we're just going to take a look at the guitars themselves today. I have various guitars from ESP LTD and Schecter that were both made in Korea and Indonesia, so we're going to use those guitars as an example today. Let's start with my 2022 ESP LTD EC1000Ts. I have 3 of them, as you can see, and the T in the EC1000T stands for full thickness. So these are nice, fat and thick, and I like full thickness. I bought these guitars in 2023, but according to the serial numbers, they were all made in 2022. Now, 2 of these are the CTM models, and CTM basically stands for custom. So these have multi-ply binding and also binding on the back. So it's kind of like a Les Paul Custom, and then the non-CTM model doesn't have the binding on the back and it has a single ply binding. But that's the only difference as far as I know. Now this one, the vintage gold satin one, was made in Korea, and then the other 2, so this one, the blue one in violet shadow, this CTM model, this one was made in Indonesia, and then this guy, the non-CTM EC1000T, was also made in Indonesia. And this one has the charcoal burst finish. Absolutely gorgeous guitar. Now in terms of price, of course, there is no difference. You're not going to pay more for one that was made in Korea versus one that was made in Indonesia. So the quality should be the same across the board. Let's compare these guitars in a couple of categories. The quality of the wood and the natural resonance and natural acoustic tone of the guitar. Fit and finish. So in that category, we're going to take a look and see if there are any cosmetic issues or flaws that are noteworthy. The frets, neck and overall playability of the guitar, and the electronics and the pickups. But let's face it, they all look beautiful. I mean, this is one of the most gorgeous ESP LTD guitars that I've ever seen or owned for that matter. And I think that they all are very beautiful looking, so that's really cool. Now in terms of the wood and resonance and acoustics, these 3 guitars are absolutely great. Each one of them sounds great acoustically when you play them in your hands. They definitely are not the same though. I guess that in terms of weight, this one and the vintage gold satin one are similar. Maybe this one is ever so slightly heavier, but the blue one is a bit more light. And because of that, it's a bit different sounding. It's a bit less bassy sounding than the other 2. And it has more mids, and it's a bit more open and bright sounding. So the heavier ones, they tend to sound a little bit more bassy and a little bit more dense. And I guess you can compare that to my experience with Gibson Les Pauls. You know, the Les Paul Customs, they also tend to sound a little bit more dense and thick. And the Les Paul Standards tend to sound a little bit more bright and snappy. And that's kind of the same here. I mean, this white one or the vintage gold satin one has that more dense sound. This one sounds more bright and open, and the charcoal burst one sits somewhere in between. In terms of the quality of the woods, I cannot say that one is better than the other or anything like that. It's all about personal preference. So that is great because the wood and the acoustics and all that stuff and the resonance is very important for me. I think that that's a very important aspect about the playing experience of an instrument. So they all sound great acoustically and they used quality woods across the board. Now in terms of fit and finish with these import guitars, you're gonna come across some issues here and there. That's just in my experience, whether a guitar comes from Korea or Indonesia. Let's take this vintage gold satin one from Korea as an example. This one is basically absolutely flawless. When you look at this guitar, there is no cosmetic issue to be found. It's absolutely gorgeous, and yeah, there are no flaws in the finish or anything like that. It's a perfect guitar. The only thing that I can think of that is less than perfect, but I don't think that it's a flaw, I think it has to do with the manufacturing, is that the binding isn't exactly or completely flush with the finish of the body. So you can kind of feel where the finish starts and the binding ends, if you know what I mean. Whereas with these two models with the gloss finish, it's not the case. It feels a bit more smooth. And I guess it has to do with the finish, because this one has the satin finish and these two have the gloss finish. And I guess with these two, they spray over the binding and the body, I guess. And with this one, it's not the case, of course, since this is a satin finish. But I'm not entirely sure why that is, but I just wanted to point it out. It does not affect the playing experience whatsoever, definitely not in a negative way. And I must say that I've also encountered this with USA-made Gibsons. That's the only thing that I can think of, but other than that, this guitar is absolutely perfect and it has been made very well. Now let's take a look at the charcoal burst EC1000T. And I have to say that this Indonesian-made guitar is also absolutely flawless when it comes to the fit and finish. There are no cosmetic flaws that can be found with this guitar at all. It's a beautifully made guitar, and I really love this thing. Yeah, it's, I don't know what to say, man. It's a perfect guitar in terms of the cosmetics. And let's agree once again that this is such a beautiful guitar. Look at that top, man. Now let's take a look at the CTM in Violet Shadow. This blue one. Now this is the only guitar of the three where I did find some minor cosmetic flaws. One thing is that under the finish on the neck, there are a little bit of dark spots going on in the wood. Maybe it's wood filler or something like that, or some drops of a darker finish. I'm not sure. It's purely cosmetic. You don't feel it at all, but it is there. I also noticed that the strap thing over here is a little bit crooked. Not a big deal for me. So I guess they screwed in the screw a little bit crooked. And also on the binding of the neck over here, the finish seems to have been chipped off ever so slightly, but that doesn't affect the playability at all. And again, like I said, I contacted the store. I sent them some pictures and they gave me a discount. And that works for me because it's a great playing guitar. It sounds great. And it's a beautiful looking guitar too, very classy. And I think that the blue finish is very unique and cool for a Les Paul custom style guitar. So for these minor cosmetic issues, I wouldn't send the guitar back at all, because if a guitar plays great, sounds great, looks great overall, and feels great, why would I send it back? Just give me a discount and I'm good. Now, do these issues come from the fact that this guitar was made in Indonesia versus the Korean guitars? I highly doubt it. I don't think so, to be honest, and I've seen worse issues with Korean-made guitars. So yeah, I don't think that these minor issues have to do with the fact that this one was made in Indonesia rather than Korea. But still, these cosmetic flaws are worth noting. But just keep in mind that if you buy a guitar from overseas or Asia, that you might encounter issues like these, and then it's up to you to decide what to do. Keep the guitar, get a discount, or send it back. Me, I just want a killer guitar that looks great, feels great, plays great, and sounds great. Now, when it comes to the necks, these guitars, they supposedly have the same neck profile, but they definitely feel different. The Korean white one, or the vintage gold satin one, has the most chunky neck, and it's the most round feeling neck with the most round shoulders. And this one, the blue one, has the fastest neck of them all. In fact, it's one of the fastest necks on an EC1000T, or EC1000 in general, that I've ever played. It's very fast and quite thin. And again, the charcoal burst one sits somewhere in between. They all feel very comfortable though, and they all feel great to play. And perhaps the thinner neck on this one also contributes to that more airy tone, that less dense tone, because more wood, in my experience, means more of a dense tone. Now, when it comes to the feel of the necks, the fretwork and the edges of the neck itself, there is a slight difference between all three of them. It's very subtle, but of course worth noting. Now keep in mind that all three of these guitars have stainless steel frets. They put that on all the high-end models these days. And the frets are really well polished across the board and also well leveled, so they can all get a very nice action. So the playability is great on all these guitars. However, with the one that was made in Korea, so the vintage gold satin one, I guess you could say that it feels ever so slightly more rolled off. And I mean the edges of the frets somewhat, but also just the edges of the fretboard itself. But the difference is so subtle, and maybe it has to do with the shoulders of the neck. I'm not sure. It just feels a little bit different in the hand than the others. I guess the edges of the fretboard of the Indonesian ones feels a little bit more hard or edgy. Not sharp or anything like that, but it just feels a little bit less smooth for some reason. Now again, we are talking about very small and subtle differences, and again, I'm really splitting hairs, but they do feel different. I can't really say that the quality is better on the Korean one than on these. It's a very personal thing, that overall playing experience, but maybe with these two, they could have put a little bit more attention in rolling off the sides of the neck a little bit, and maybe the ends of the frets as well. But I've encountered that exact same thing with some Korean-made guitars. So does that have to do with the country of origin? I highly doubt it. Now let's talk about the electronics briefly. Each of these guitars have the same pickups and the same switches and everything, the same controls. These are the Fishman Fluence classic open core pickups, and there are two push-pull functions on here as well. They sound great, and they all sound the same basically in terms of the pickups. I did notice that these pickups are a little bit more noisy than some of my other pickups, which you will notice a bit more when you're using high gain, especially very bright high gain tones. So they are a little bit more hissy than some other pickups, which was surprising to me, to be honest, because I was expecting them to be very silent, which they are not. In my experience, the Fishman pickups tend to be a little bit more noisy than EMGs or passive pickups for that matter. Not a big deal, but worth mentioning. But in terms of the quality of the electronics, I did not notice any difference between the Indonesian-made guitars and the Korean-made EC1000T. So again, all three of these guitars in terms of wood, in terms of the playability, the fit and finish, and the electronics are basically the same. So based on these three guitars, I can't really say that the guitars made in Korea are superior to the ones made in Indonesia. I mean, they all feel a little bit differently, but you're also going to get those differences when they are made in the same country. They may use machines in these factories, but they also use human hands. So there's also always that human aspect. I guess that's one of the reasons why the necks all feel slightly different. So the cosmetic issues on the blue one, in my opinion, could have just as well happened with a Korean-made guitar. Okay, now I also quickly want to give a couple more examples. Let me grab two guitars. Let's take a quick look at these ESP LTD Phoenixes. This is the 6-string Phoenix Black Metal, and this is the Baritone 7-string Phoenix Black Metal as well. So very similar guitars, aside from the amount of strings and the scale length, because this one is a baritone guitar, and this one has a more standard scale, and also the bridge construction. Now this 6-string model was made in Korea in 2021, and this 7-string model was made in Indonesia in 2022. And in terms of the body wood and resonance and weight, they are very similar. The quality is basically the same in terms of the wood and the quality across the board. They both sound great when you play them acoustically and also electrically. And cosmetically, they are both absolutely flawless too. No flaws can be found on these guitars. They are made very well. And in terms of the frets and the overall feel and playability, there also is no difference. They both play great, and the frets were finished off really well. The fret leveling was done really well, so low action is not a problem with these guitars. And the electronics seem to be on par as well with the Fishman Fluence modern pickups. So again, there's nothing about these guitars that is different in terms of quality, even though this one was made in Korea and this one was made in Indonesia. Now I also have a 6-string model, basically the same model as this that was made in Indonesia. Let me grab that one real quick. So this is my other Phoenix Black Metal. As you can see, I swapped the pick guard and this cover over here for the white ones on one of my Arctic Metal ones. But this one was made in Indonesia in 2020. And this one was made before they put stainless steel frets on their guitars. So this one has nickel frets. Let me first say that in terms of quality, this guitar is basically perfect. The only thing that I noticed when I bought this guitar is that there are some slight sort of small cracks near the frets in the binding or the finish of the binding. I also got a discount for that. I've seen that on other guitars as well. Not an issue for me, purely cosmetic. But the main thing is that this one has the nickel frets. And I must say that the smoothness of the edge of the frets and the neck is more smooth on the nickel fret guitars rather than the stainless steel fret guitars, in my opinion and in my experience. For some reason, I guess it's easier for them to round those frets off when they are made of nickel rather than the harder stainless steel. And that's something that I noticed across the board with all the ESP LTD guitars. In general, the stainless steel fret guitars, they tend to feel a little bit harder or a little bit more edgy, I guess you could say, when you run your hand across the neck. Now this one has a very smooth and fast playing experience because the fret ends are just so well rounded off. And with the stainless steel frets, it's not that exact same experience. Again, the shoulders or the edges of the frets, I guess how they are rounded off, it's just a bit more of a hard feel when you run your hand across them. And again, that's with all the stainless steel frets ESP LTDs that I've ever played. Now one more final example with two Schecter guitars. Let me grab them for you. So I reviewed these guitars recently on the channel. Both are killer guitars. This is the E1 Apocalypse Red Rain, and this one was made in Korea in 2023. And this is the Sunset 7 Triad Baritone 7-string guitar with the Tripocalypse pickup. This one was also made in 2023, but this one was made in Indonesia. Obviously very different guitars, but made in different countries by the same brand. And I have to say, and I'm echoing this from my reviews as well, which I recommend checking out up here or down here, by the way, if you're interested, that the quality on these guitars across the board is just incredible. In terms of the wood, the natural resonance, the fit and finish, the fretwork and everything like that, both of these guitars are really exceptional. Great guitars. In fact, these are some of the best import guitars that I've ever played. They feel very good and very classy and expensive in the hands when you play them. So yeah, I'm really impressed with Schecter these days. The only thing that I can think of that I also mentioned in the review is that this Tripocalypse pickup setup is a little bit more noisy than some of my other guitars. And I guess it doesn't have to do with the fact that this one was made in Indonesia, but it probably has to do with the way that this setup works. These are USA made pickups after all, so the pickups weren't made in Indonesia. It's just a weird pickup combination with the Triad and all that stuff. So I guess that that's the cause of a little bit more noise. Really killer guitars. I love these things. Now, one more thing that I want to mention is that a little while ago, I ordered a Schecter guitar, a C8 8-string, one of the red cherry ones, the 28-inch scale 8-string models from Thomann. And unfortunately, that guitar did have some issues with the fretwork. That one was made in Korea, I believe in 2023, I'm not sure. But the frets were really uneven, so you could not get low enough action without fret buzz, and it really needed a fret level. So I was bummed out about that, but I immediately sent it back because for me that's just not acceptable. But just to keep in mind, you know, I did have that experience as well, and that one was made in Korea. So again, there's a theme here. There are issues to be found on Korean or Indonesian models, but in general, I do think that they make great guitars in both countries. So that's what we basically can conclude here, whether it's LTD or Schecter, whether the guitars are made in Korea or Indonesia, the quality in general is very good across the board. With these import guitars, sometimes issues just happen, whether it's electronics that fail, you know, small cosmetic imperfections, or maybe sometimes even like cracks in the ebony fretboards, stuff like that will happen. When you get that guitar, make sure you check it out. If it's good enough, keep it, get a discount. If it's unacceptable, just send it back. But again, mostly my experiences have been really good with guitars, either from Korea or Indonesia. So I cannot say that Korean guitars are superior to Indonesian guitars at all. In general, the quality seems to be exactly the same, basically. So stop worrying about whether a guitar was made in Indonesia or Korea, because in my opinion, it really doesn't matter, okay? That's all for this video. I hope this was of help to you and that you enjoyed it. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons down below to be notified of more content in the future. And you can also follow Sonic Drive Studio on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What have your experiences been with Korean and Indonesian guitars from these brands? Let me know. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you soon. Cheers. Cheers.